I'm here today with Tyler of Arrival of Autumn to talk about Kingdom Undone, out May 26th on Nuclear Blast. Thank you for taking the time to join me on the channel to talk about the band, about the record. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. It's been a good day. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Really enjoying the day, and now I'm enjoying it even more that we get to sit down and chat about the record. But before we even do that, let's go back a little bit to the tour that you guys just finished with Heathen. How did that tour go? I saw you guys in Toronto. I had a blast at the show. Everybody was having a good time. But how was the tour for you guys?
Yeah, tour was great, man. It was an honor to be asked to go out with Heathen. They're a boutique legacy act, and they're still crushing it. And they're still putting out like relevant music, and they're the nicest dudes ever. They're a walking party, like just a whirlwind, and it's awesome, man.
Was it a little bit difficult for you guys to break through the ice, not with the band, but with the fan base, considering that your sound and their sound are like miles apart?
You saw it. It's a lot of fucking bunch of old thrash fucks that can't just I'm one of them. That's the crazy part. I'm one of those guys, so I get it. But also, like, if you're just gonna sit there like an asshole like this, check yourself at the door. Get the fuck out of here with that attitude. I mean, you're like these dudes are they're older and like they just have no respect. I mean, but when you go and talk to them afterwards, they usually melt. They're usually like, that was cool, that was good. But I mean, you can move your fucking head a little bit. You're allowed to like music.
Yeah.
It's heavy guitars. Like, if you like heavy guitars, take one step forward. If you like fast drums, take another step forward. Next thing you know, they should all be right at the front. But instead, that elitist bullshit, they sit there like this.
You know what's the fun thing about this whole thing is that this was the second time I saw you guys in Toronto. I saw you guys for the first time on an In Flames tour that you guys did. And when I saw you guys play on that tour, I didn't know who you guys were. I didn't know you guys were from Canada. I was just like, I always go early because I like to check out every single band that's on the bill. And I was
That's
like,
awesome.
these guys kick ass. Who are they? Like, where are they from? And that's kind of how I discovered you guys. And it made more sense for you guys to be on that tour because I feel like the
Yeah,
Inflame fans and fans of Arrival of Autumn, there's a Venn diagram where those two worlds meet. But
yeah,
with the
absolutely.
Heathen, I feel like you guys really had to work hard every single night.
That's good. It's a good problem to have. I mean, because at the end of the tour, we started winning these people over more. But it's different. They're actually really nice. Like, Heathen fans rule, but they're thrash heads, and they're real thrash heads. If they're coming out to see Heathen, you're a real thrash fan. And I'm a real thrash fan. That's why I took the tour. I was like, boys, Heathen wants to take us out. We have to do it. I'll tour with Heathen 7 days a week. They're just excellent dudes, good hangs. Any legacy like thrash act like that, I don't know. I just kind of like to pay my respects, and like, if it wasn't for bands like that, I don't know if I would be doing what I'm doing.
I know,
So
but then you guys had to deal with the riffraff of those guys from Invicta and Gabe from Raider and all of those guys. I mean, I feel really bad for you. Like you guys had to deal with a
let
lot of riffraff.
let me just phrase it this way: Gabe from Raider should be locked up forever. He's an animal. I can't even look. I can't even look at that guy without laughing. Like, the guy has a direct line to my funny bone. It's wild.
Am I the only guy who every time I look at him, I see Stephen Buscemi and Airheads? Am I the only guy? Like I can't be the only guy. But anyway,
Absolutely, absolutely, dude. It's kind of fun though, with the whole like touring with thrash acts like that, is because you do win over a lot of those people, and those are the fans that I want. Because the thing about thrash fans is they're there for life. They're dedicated, and they're lifers at all the time. And that's kind of it's a cool position to be in as a metalcore act, to kind of be accepted into that circle now, because we did the Heathen tour, and the Heathen got to know us, and Invicta got to know us, Raider got to know us, and they realized, oh, they're just a bunch of they're thrash heads too, and then we're just kind of like part of that crew. So we roll tighter with those guys. Like, they're just I find that thrash bands are a lot more fun to hang with. Metalcore acts, a lot of times they're kind of just looking to burn you, and a lot of times they're looking to be offended by shit, or I don't know. Like, you can be yourself amongst the thrash crew, and it's sick.
so now that you've had this tour, a difficult tour to be on in terms of that breaking through that fan base barrier. But looking back now, what song from the set list do you feel was the one that perhaps connected better with that audience?
I found oddly enough, Apocalyptic seemed to be the one that got people going, and which is weird because it's a slow song, like it's got a slow groovy riff, but it seemed to be such an oddball that people gravitated towards that. And then Scars, people really like Scars.
Yeah, it sounded great live.
Thank you.
Sounded fucking great live. So now let's talk about this record, Kingdom Undone. Uh, do you guys start an album process with a roadmap in terms of, okay, this is what we want out of this record, or is the whole roadmap for you guys a little bit more organic, and you start to pick up pieces along the way until you have enough to put an album
You
together?
can't. I don't know if some bands do that, but we can't. We can't start with a roadmap of this is what we want. This is the goal. You just kind of you got to write, and so like we tried to write a slow song before, and it turned into Apocalyptic. That was it. We try for something, and then something else comes out of it, and the song will take the direction that it wants to take, and the album took the direction that the album wanted to take, and that's kind of how it is. Ryan writes in such a strange way that things are going to sound like Ryan, and the more we try to plan what a song should be like, it just doesn't turn out well. You got to kind of just let it take its own shape and do what's best for what's presented to you. Because once every member gets a hold of the idea that's been given to them and adds their own 2 cents to it, that's where the development of the song comes from. So Ryan might hand me a guitar riff and he might have an idea for the drums, but then I'll send my drums to him and it could be completely different than what he thought he was going to get. But ultimately, that's kind of how this works. A lot of the times he'll write the drums and stuff. But, we always kind of just riff back and forth and throw things back and forth at each other, and things will they'll take the shape they want to take. It's hard to just have a preconceived notion or an idea for something that doesn't exist. It's hard to be like, I want this. How do we get there with a song? I mean, it's good to do that with other things in life, but when you do that with a song, that's how you wind up with forced things, and it doesn't always sound good.
So having said that you take more of that organic process, are you still one of those guys that at the end of the process, when the album is complete, do you look back at the previous record and see the differences and perhaps the growth that the new album offers when you have those two comparisons in front of you?
Yeah, if you A&B these two records side by side, this one's a lot more. It's different. It's chunkier, and it sounds like Ryan. It sounds like us, but Ryan had like a huge um, influence in the writing on this one. Brendan and Ryan pretty much split Harbinger down the middle, and Jason helped with a lot of it. Sukoff used the producer on the last one. This one is all us at all times, other than a few small arrangements, but every riff is ours, every idea is ours, all the vocal melodies, everything is AOA to a T, and it actually turned out for the best. Like you can see the growth from Harbinger to Kingdom Undone.
I would say that this is a more dense record, more compact and more dense. I mean, at least not looking at songs specifically, but just looking at the overall feel that you get when you go from first to last. It just feels like a more dense, a more compact record. The fact that the record is only 38 minutes in length, is that to help make the album a little bit easier to digest, considering how dense it is?
I had no idea the album was only 38 minutes long. I
Well,
had
now
no
you
clue. I was like,
do.
there's 11 songs on it that all have something to offer, and that's the goal. That's why there's 11 tracks on it. We have 11 complete songs. We don't write for length. We write until the idea is done. If the idea takes a minute and a half and it's done, that's all we need. We're not here to bore the listener or like I don't know, like Metallica Frantic or something where it's just like the same. They'll ride Saint Anger riffs all day, but we can't do that. We're don't bore us. Get to the chorus.
Do
That's
you
kind of
think
how we operate.
is the album defined sound wise? Is the album defined by the individual songs, or do you see a connection between them that then defines the overall perspective of the record?
You can kind of go both ways. You can literally close your eyes on a dartboard and cherry pick any song, and you're gonna have a good time. Every song had just as much effort as every other song. Some more accessible than others, but everything had a lot put into it. In context, it flows. Individually, it stands up on its own. It's not relying on three singles with a bunch of filler. But for a cohesive listen, it's better to digest in album form. Everything starts out in a way and ends in a way. So it starts out with Scars, Show Yourself, Show Who You Really Are. And then it ends with Bury Me, which is like, and Kingdom Undone, which it sounds like it's starting to fall apart and things are starting to come off the rails. That was the point of Kingdom Undone at the end, how it sounds a little bit empty at the start and then it slowly comes together. It sounds like things are collapsing. And that was the goal, to start and finish. The Kingdom is Undone.
Is the production behind the record an important element of creating a Rival of Autumn sound and the sound that this album has? Is that an important piece of the puzzle?
Like actual, like sonically and how, like the sonic, like
Yeah,
what
yeah,
the
to have
record
that
sounds like.
effect, to have the effect that you guys want, and that dense nature of the overall sound.
We're audiophiles and having good sounding records is super important to us. Everything is raw and record, everything's its own take, which is super cool. Harbinger is the same way. It was all, we had to be sonically, like some things went wrong on the snare drum on Harbinger. I don't know, I can't speak to that, but I'm not a fan of like a few things on that record. So we kind of had to come out swinging at this one production wise to make sure it was the best sounding record we could make. And sonically, it's one of the best sounding albums of 2023 across the board.
Yeah, it's very consistent. Quality wise, it's very consistent. Like you could feel
That
like there's a lot of work that's gone into this record in order for the fan to get the most out of each and every single song. So
Totally, man. You should see the amount that went into the drum recording and the tuning of the drums just to make sure we didn't have this happen again. Harbinger has its place, and it doesn't sonically sound bad. It's actually I like it, but a lot of people had some shit to say about, especially the snare drum and like the loudness of like the bass guitars and stuff. But I like that. I like a lot of bass, and I like a snare drum to sound like a real snare drum. People are so used to snares and stuff sounding like a programmed drum set. And the thing about Harbinger, it sounds like you're in the room with a real snare drum.
I was just gonna say it's a more, I mean, comparing the two, it's a more raw album. This is perhaps a little bit more defined album, but it's not to say that one is better over the other. It really comes down to one is almost like you recorded live. It has that feel, that roughness that you'd get in a live show, that in a live performance.
Yeah, we wanted to keep the life with this one. We wanted to be a little bit prettier and just to get the ideas across, but everything had to be real. Like there's very little sampling over anything. I mean, the kick drum, of course, is sampled. I mean, every metal kick drum is for the most part, but every guitar riff is, I believe, played as its own take. The drums are pretty much all me all the time. Like if you're not familiar with the behind the scenes, anybody listening, and how drums are recorded, a lot of times they're just programmed, or a lot of the times they're just sampled over. But a lot of this is it's mostly just me. Everything's got to be fixed up to make sure that you're you need to be a certain standard, right? And everything was pretty much left as is. Performance was everything on this, making sure the performances got the point across. And that was super stressful because anybody who knows me knows I don't fucking like this studio at all. It's my least favorite place to be in the entire world.
You just want to play live.
I just want to play live. If I never step foot in a recording studio ever again, I wouldn't give a fuck.
I love the honesty. I love the honesty. You said that a lot of work went into the drums. So while you guys don't have a picture or a vision of what you're working towards when it comes to the record, do you have a vision of what you wanted your drums to come across on this album?
Uh, so the main thing was to make sure sonically we had good sounding drums, and Mark Lewis made sure that the drums sounded excellent. And he knew that I don't like the studio. He knows that that's like the bane of my existence, and he made it easy. But I also rehearsed my ass off, so I didn't have to be in there for very long. Uh, I would love I would love to be able to go into a studio and just crush it and have a blast. But as soon as that red light comes on, I'm just like, I would want nothing more than to be able to enjoy it. But I love just getting on stage and playing for the people and like I don't know if you saw, I like to make faces at people in the front and like have fun and get people going as much as I can, even if there's a lot of old head thrash guys that don't want to. I just try to make faces at them and get them laughing and shit. That's what I live for. But I will go in the studio and I will do my very, very best. It just makes me feel anxious. It makes me feel I just not my happy place. But I'm trying.
You're trying. All right, that's all we can ask for. As long
Yeah.
as you're trying, We're all good. Now, the sound on this album, it sounded to me like you guys pushed more towards the hardcore side of the band versus just your more pure traditional metalcore side. Do you see that this album perhaps is a little bit more aggressive, has a lot more intensity, and therefore with quicker songs as well, which gives you more that traditional hardcore experience?
So the songs just take the shape of whichever the idea that's presented, whether it's a guitar riff, a bass line, or just a drum riff. Scars was just a drum riff, and then I had a riff in my head on the guitars that I wanted to hear. So I was like, Ryan, I have this riff, and it turned into me like mouthing the riff to him, and then he would sit in front of me. I'm like, no, not that. Change this, and then I'm like, okay, that's what I'm hearing. That's the riff. And I gave him a few different ideas from that song. He put them together and then put a chorus on it, and that's where you have Scars. As for it being a more hardcore record, that was never, we've never, I don't even know if we've said the word, like, we never even associated ourselves with the hardcore scene or anything like that. I love hardcore, don't get me wrong, but we never really actively pursued that. This is just the way the ideas took shape. And I think because of the way the world's been, maybe it was just natural that it came out a little more aggressive.
Do you see this album perhaps now as a more accurate definition of what the DNA and what the signature sound
Yes.
of the band is going to be going forward?
Yes. I mean, you can hear it because nobody sounds like Ryan. The way that Ryan writes his guitar riffs and the way that our riffs sound, people don't sound like him. He's got his own unique style. And then him and Brendan put together, that's the DNA. And we have a very unique vocal sound too. Like we are our singer's a growl is it's him when as soon as we're on. If you don't already know by Ryan's guitar riffs or Brendan's guitar riffs, when Jameson starts screaming, that's a rival of a. He doesn't sound like anybody.
What kind of challenges do you guys go through that perhaps if you were living in Chicago, Illinois, you wouldn't go through? Being a Canadian band, is there higher mountains to climb, bigger walls to break through?
Everything is designed to take your money away. If you're from where we're from, just to get to the States and to understand what it takes to book a tour and what's required just for us to pay a normal price on our visas, that would require people in the scene to have their stuff together and promoters to have contracts to us 6 months in advance so we don't have to pay $4,000 for visas just to come to the States. It's a fucking joke. It's the worst, and it seems like it's only going to get worse. They're having a meeting soon, if not already, where they're thinking about tripling the price of visas. And more often than not, if you're a Canadian band, you won't have all your contracts signed by every promoter, and you will need to premium process your visas just to be able to make sure you can cross the border in time. In which case, they're going to ding you even more money, and then you have merchandise. If you cross the border with too much merchandise, you might not be allowed. It presents a gigantic amount of headaches, and you gotta love it. You gotta love to do this to be able to do what we do. And nothing is your friend, and it's the people that you meet along the way that make it worth it. So some days it's a little harder on the Heathen tour when you have people sitting there like this, and if they only knew what the fuck we had to go through just to get to them, it would be. I think they would be a little bit of a different tune. We're there to make people happy for the night.
Do
So, and
you
if
see a
they,
disconnect between, I mean, there's a lot of talk right now about merch cuts. I think that's the hot topic right now, but I don't think there's
we've
enough,
been,
yeah, but I don't think there's enough people talking about all the other shit that bands have to go through just to play in the US. Do you feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect between the reality of bands like yourselves and others have to go through and what fans think that you guys actually go through?
people still think that there's a backstage that exists. Yeah, they're like, man, I would love to come backstage. Man, you must make a lot of money when you're on tour. That's so cool. Those are a lot of things that people like to say. Their perceived stigma of being in a rock and roll band, it's like a reverse stigma. People are like, man, you must be crushing it with money. Man, I want to go backstage. Like, oh, you mean that green room that smells like piss on a good day?
When you get a green room.
Yeah, when we get a green room, it's usually a tiny, like overheated. I mean, sometimes you get treated like royalty. Sometimes we got to just stay in the van. Sometimes a bunch of bikers show up with guns at your show, and sometimes, yeah, great shows where everybody's happy.
it's definitely a weird world that we live in right now because I personally see that disconnect in terms of comments that I read on our videos and things like that. And I don't think people really understand exactly what a band has to go through, the money that a band has to spend before that you guys even play one single show, one single note. It's crazy.
Yeah, and when it comes to things like merch cut and stuff, it doesn't make any fucking sense. What they could do is say, "Oh, we pay this much money in rent every month," and then I can say, "Okay, well, I'm currently renting out 10 square feet from you for the night. Here's 35 cents." That's the only thing that makes sense in terms of merch cut. Oh, we're taking up space on the floor that could be for people. Divide that by their month's rent by 10 square feet. That might be the only justifiable charge they could have. But meanwhile, $16 drinks too. I mean,
I know,
get
I was just
fucking
gonna
real.
say, but they're making money on drinks, and let's face the facts. I went to see you guys at Sneaky D's. If you guys weren't playing, I wouldn't be there. So
Yeah,
you know what I
but
mean?
they
Like,
don't take cuts. Those venues, like the venues on the tour, there is no cuts.
oh, that's
Usually
great to
that's in
know.
the contract. So the merch cut is usually there's a bigger entertainment company in Canada. You know who they are. And my friend she's pretty high up, but then I've been talking to her about this bullshit. And I won't say their name because I'm currently in talks with them about this problem, and I want to see what I can do. But then you have a lot of fucking hotheads on YouTube and everything that aren't on the band's side. They're so-called influencers, but they're not interested in helping the band. They're more interested in just having a hot take and saying, "Well, bands don't have to sign the contracts; they sign the contract." Like we have to. You know how many other bands would just slide in and take this opening spot and be willing to pay that merch cut? But
Exactly,
well,
exactly.
yeah, we're strong armed to it. It's like we don't have to sign the contract, but that means we have to get a merch cut, but then we get to tour. It's a merch cut tour, no merch cut, stay home.
I think, and not to prolong this conversation because I don't want to take us away from your record, but I honestly feel like the only way this situation is going to get better is if bigger bands get involved because bigger bands have a little bit more of a pull, they have a little bit more of a weight that they can throw around. But at the end of the day, they don't really care either. It's not like they care about bands like yours or others. I mean, when you're making the big bucks, like, do you really care about the ecosystem below you? You should, but I
I
don't
do.
but I don't think a lot of bands do. That's the problem. You know what I mean?
It's
So
because of things like this. Once you get to a certain point, you're so fucking jaded. I don't blame bigger bands for not wanting to look at me twice or take me on tour. I get it. But that being said, adapt, overcome, steal your own merch, bring it into the venue with your road cases, sneak it behind. They count you in so they know how much you sell. But you can always, if you're smart, you sneak it in beforehand and you sell it. I mean, certain venues will sell a couple grand worth of merch and pay $40 in merch cut. I mean, there's ways around it. You just got to be smart.
yeah,
Fuck them. They're crooks. They're trying to fuck me. I have every right to fuck you.
I think
So
this is where having also a good merch person really works in your
we
favor.
have our merch guy trained to fuck the merch cut,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
we
yeah.
will
You have
till the end of time.
you have to. There's no other way. There's no other way around it. But getting back into the record with this album now coming out May 26th, you guys just finished this Heathen tour. Are you planning on hitting the road right after the release so you can keep this momentum going?
Yes, we have another headliner booked right now, and then something actually just came down the pipe that we're working on as well. So hopefully that goes according to plan. I don't want to say yet what exactly that is. Hopefully that's announced within the next couple days. So we're excited about that. I mean, East Coast is always super good to us, but now it's time to hit the West, and that'll be announced shortly.
And how do you feel in terms of the fan reception from Canadian fans to American fans? Do you guys get a little bit more of a Homer effect when you're playing Canadian dates?
Western Canada, yes. Eastern United States, yes. Baltimore crushes for us. I don't know why, but Baltimore seems to be like the place out east. We have a lot of weird cities that come out for us. And oddly enough, Montreal. Montreal, like out east, never Eastern Canada,
Montreal kills everybody. They just
Eastern
kill it.
Eastern Canada as a whole has never really cared about us. And then Montreal, because we're from Alberta, I mean, there's obviously tension between Quebec and Alberta, which we don't subscribe to. We would like to be friends with everybody. And you know what? They came out to like the first time we ever played Montreal. It was fantastic. We met the people. There was no weirdness. And then when we played there this time, again, like a bunch of people, four kids showed up wearing all matching Arrival of Autumn shirts, and we're just throwing down the whole time. It was the coolest shit. they got the special edition Bark at the Moon shirt. All four of them were dressed the exact same, and they got photos, and they sent me their demos, and I was listening to them. I sent them they asked me for notes on their demo, so I sent that back to them today actually,
Oh,
and
that's
it's been
fucking
really
cool, man.
cool to see it growing out east, and in Toronto too. We had a bunch of people show up, and Toronto gets spoiled a lot with shows, so it was nice to see people actually come out and rep for us there. So that was a really good show.
You guys are becoming one of those bands that it's really standing out in the crowd. Not just in the Canadian scene, but in general. Like you guys are a band that has great tools, and you're putting it forward. You see the improvement with every single record. Pretty soon, you're going to be one of those bands that younger bands that are starting now are looking up to. But what bands did you look up to? Like, who did you look up to, maybe even within the Canadian scene, that made you want to pick up the sticks and do some drumming?
Trivium was the one I think that made me want to get into the more extreme side of things. That was the first metalcore band I'd heard, and I was like, oh shit, this makes sense to me. Chiller to Bodom, and then as for Canadian bands, like I don't really know which bands. I know there's a band from BC called the Body Politic who we used to play with lots, and they're our age, but they were just so far ahead of us in the game, and they are one of the best live bands I've seen to this day. And they should have kept going because they were just too strange. I think they were like Protest the Hero slash deathcore slash. They had a really cool thing going, and they were fucking unreal live. They dusted us every time. So they were like a band that gave me a kick in the pants and said, "You gotta tighten up your bootstraps and you gotta play. You gotta play better."
One last question for you. When you see a band like Archfire winning a Juno, like an extreme metal band like Archfire winning a Juno, does that give you a little bit of hope that a band like Arrival of Autumn one day can also win a Juno, that there's room for this sound, extreme sound, to go ahead and win an award like that? Or do you even
If
care?
if the Juno Awards burned to the ground tomorrow, I wouldn't give a fuck. Making music a competition and awards, who cares? As for Archfire, they fucking rule and they should win every Juno for everything.
For every
I think
category.
Archfire, yeah. I think Archfire is easily the most talented band on there, and they are. I don't know. They can't be fucked with in terms of like literally everything that band does is sick, and their attitude. I don't know. They are perfect ambassadors for how heavy you can be, and how fun you can be, and how professional you can be. And I don't know them personally, but I know people that do, and everybody that talks about them and knows them says they're just outstanding uh, members of the community, and they seem just like a good time. And I really appreciate from a distance like what they're doing. I would love to get to know those guys or meet them. We played one festival, but I didn't get to talk to them. But I'm a fan and I see what they're up to, and they make me happy. Today I saw a video of them playing Twister with the crowd, and that shit made my day. I loved it. So big shout out to Archfire, and like everything they do, it makes me happy that a band that can be that extreme can have that much success.
I think we need to have a Arrival of Autumn Archfire tour, and maybe throw in another Canadian band that you like onto that mix, and have an all Canadian luau of all of you guys hitting the road would be absolutely amazing.
Get the Shot, I think, is the sickest band to
Oh,
come out in a long time too. That's another band. They're straight up just evil, man. It sounds like Billy Talent was possessed by the devil. And
I, I've never heard that description before, but I'm
dude,
I'm I'm okay with it.
and Metallica. They love Metallica. You can tell the guitar player rips off Kirk Hammett in all his solos, and the vocalist. There's some James Hetfield vocals weaseled in this crazy satanic hardcore, and I'm all about it. I've been repping that band and pushing them on people for years now. And one day I hope they know who I am. I just want them to acknowledge my existence. That band and Tsunami. Those are the only two bands I give a shit about. I want them to be like Arrival of Autumn's cool. If I could have street cred amongst those two, I'd be stoked.
That's fucking amazing. I love how you're finishing this interview. I love that. I hope your dreams come true. I honestly hope to see one of these days on Instagram, on your stories, you guys like sharing a quote from one of those bands, giving you guys a shout out. At the end of the day, we're all fans. You guys are fans of bands. We're fans of your band. So I love the fact that you guys are super grounded, super cool dudes. Like I said, I've had the pleasure to see you guys live in Toronto twice. I'll always going to go to a show if you guys are playing, because you guys bring a lot of fun, a lot of great energy to your performances. And it was a blast seeing you guys. And thank you for the time today.
Dude, anytime, man. It's people like you that make doing this like worth it. Some days are bad, some days are good, and people like you make the days better. So we're very excited that people like you want to talk to us. So that means a lot.
My pleasure, man. My pleasure. Thank you very much for taking the time. All the best. The album comes out May 26th on Nuclear Blast, Arrival of Autumn, Kingdom Undone. Go check it out. The videos, the singles are dropping on YouTube, so and on iTunes. So go get that shit. Go support these Canadian boys. I'll see you
Thank you
very
very
soon
much.
on the road again.
Thank you very much, man. Stoked to see you.